Hey everyone, welcome to Adventures of Sarah. We're doing questions with Andrew, Slovenia today. I'm Andrew Vallone, in case you haven't met me before. If you've been to Slovenia, you've probably been with me. Anyway, I just want to do a Q&A, kind of about anything in Slovenia. I've lived here for 11 years, so some people might not know my backstory, especially if you haven't come here on one of the tours. So I lived in Seattle. Sarah and I have known each other since the 90s. And I started my own tour company back in 2005, running tours in Slovenia and Croatia, because those are the two countries I knew and I liked. And then kind of just expanded a little bit there, went to some neighboring countries before Sarah and I started working together in 2018. So in 2014, I moved here with my family. So I've been here more than 11 years now. Um, so yeah, I'll talk about anything kind of about living here, expat stuff, travel stuff, food things, some history, things like that. And if you have any questions, I'm going to monitor the Facebook page. So if you drop a question in, then I'll make sure I answer it. So I'm going to start with I figure I'll start with just a few facts. Um, a friend of mine, she's actually a tour guide for our groups in Piran, which is one of the nice little towns on the seaside. She sent me some questions, which I think were almost more like they were trick questions. And she was like, "How many official languages are there in Slovenia?" And I'm like, wait a sec. Okay, there's Slovenian, and Slovenian language is a Slavic language. Same family as Russian, Polish, Czech, Serbo-Croatian, Bulgarian, things like that. And I'm like, well, I live on the coast here, and the coast is bilingual. So all the signs have to be in Italian as well. And if you get married or do anything with the city, that kind of stuff, you can have everything in Italian as well as Slovenian. That's kind of only here right on the coast. But I know on the eastern part of Slovenia, where they're next to Hungary, there's a Hungarian minority there, and so Hungarian is official language as well. So, most, let's say everyone here speaks Slovenian. If you're over 40 something or so, you're probably going to speak Serbo-Croatian, which is what most of the rest of former Yugoslavia spoke back in the Yugoslav days. Um, and then everyone speaks English. Those people who don't speak English still understand very much. I used to have a landlord who spoke no English and understood exactly everything I told him. But also Italian and Hungarian are also recognized as official languages. Um, and then she said, "How old is Slovenia?" And I'm guessing that this is kind of another trick question because Slovenia is very young. So Slovenia never existed as its own country, independent country, until 1991. So it's 34 years old. Very, very young. That's June 25th, 1991 is when they had their independence. But let's say, sometimes you've got the culture or language, and that's separate from the do we have our own independent country? Because as a lot of us know who traveled in Europe quite a bit, we know that up until maybe just 100 years ago, before 100 years ago, there were not so many countries. There were more empires. So Slovenian language has been around since 10th or 11th century, but the country itself is very young. Um, some of the countries that made up Yugoslavia, they had been independent before, like Croatia, Serbia, Montenegro. But Slovenia was never independent until then. So it's quite young, but language is quite old. And she also asked, this is good because I live on the coast. Hey, how big is the coast? And that's kind of always the joke here because we have a very, very short coastline, 28 miles. And for those of you in Europe, or let's say the rest of the world, that actually use the metric system, which is everyone but Americans, that's 45 kilometers. So not a whole lot. Our neighbors next to us in Italy and our neighbors south of us in Croatia have a lot more coastline than that. So just a little quick, very quick thing. Slovenia, very small, 2 million people. If you drive more than 3 hours or so through, in Slovenia, you'll probably drive out of Slovenia. And we have Italy, Austria, Hungary, and Croatia are our border neighbors, and we're also on the Adriatic Sea. Um, some people ask like, "Hey, are you on the euro? How is everyone? How does the people speak English here?" These are kind of really basic things. I almost don't think about them anymore because I assume everyone knows. But yes, Slovenia is in the EU. They're on the euro, so they use the euro current as their currency. And then they're in the Schengen zone, which means if you come from another Schengen country before you come to Slovenia, whether it's France or Spain or Italy or Germany or Poland, and you come to Slovenia, there's technically like no borders. So that's kind of like like kind of the factual stuff in a nutshell. So I'll go to I kind of put the questions together kind of by category. So a friend of mine who's been on one of my tours, hey Susan, thanks for sending in a question. She's like, I am thinking about a long-term solo stay in Slovenia. Maybe even 3 months. Where do you suggest I go for a month at a time to get a feel for what the country has to offer? She's like, she's interested in cities or quiet places or any place. Well, Susan, there's not a whole lot of cities in Slovenia, as you've been here before. I live in Koper. Koper is the only port city in Slovenia. It has 23,000 people, and it's sixth or seventh largest city in the country. Ljubljana, the capital, has 270,000 or so. The next biggest is Maribor, which has barely 100,000, and then everything after that is like 60, 40, 30. Yeah, so very small cities. So if you're thinking of coming here and like, hey, like why not? Every American who's got a passport, they could spend 90 days on a 180-day period in the Schengen zone, which could be a myriad of countries or just one country. Spending 3 months here, actually, I think you would not get bored. Um, I think I would say like yeah, you're probably gonna have to be in Ljubljana, not just because it's the capital and there's more things going on. There's certainly more things to explore. And maybe you have a better chance of making some connections or friendships there, but you're also you could it's so central, it's almost in the center of the country. You can do so many day trips from Ljubljana, so that's kind of a no-brainer. There's within an hour driving radius, and driving is very easy here. You can go to a lot of places. So I would say, yeah, a month maybe in Ljubljana. Uh, if I was doing it maybe by region, I'd depend. I'd say you could go. I wouldn't stay in Bled. I'd want to kind of put in a nature place, and Lake Bled is so touristy maybe somewhere in that area. But I might say you go to the eastern part of the country. Maribor is 100,000, but Ptui, which is this really cute small town and the oldest town in Slovenia, that's really nice. And from there, you're half an hour from Maribor, which has got more things going on. And it's really nice. I was just there last month with my kids. They've redone the riverside. There's a lot going on there. Patui's really nice. Has a lot of history. There's so many idyllic little villages and wine regions there that not a lot of people see. And food's very different as well. And that part of the country is more flat than the rest of the country. So really good for outdoor stuff if you want to cycle, and lots of thermal spas. So I'm kind of saying like, you get big city life, or as big city as you get in Slovenia and Ljubljana, and then Patui for a month and all the little day trips and stuff there. And part of that could be like, hey, pop into this part of what it would be northwest Croatia and the Styria region of Austria, like Graz, Austria, which is a lot of stuff going on there. Medium-sized city. That's probably about an hour away drive, and you can even go to Lake Balaton in Hungary, really beautiful area. That's probably under 2 hours, so lots to do there. And then for the third month, I would say come somewhere where I'm at on the coast. But hey, if you're not a summer beach person, or if it's not the summertime, there's a lot of places nearby you can go to one of the wine regions like the Karst region or Goriška Brda or this area around where I live. And then you've got so many little kind of trips into Italy you can do. You've got the caves here. You've got so much, like this is probably the best place to eat, I think. So if you're going to spend another month in Slovenia, then hang around here. You've got a lot of nature, and you've got, you do have 3 or 4 really nice little towns on the coast. So maybe that's how I'd spend 3 months in Slovenia there, without going into to uber details on things. Um, let's see. And then someone else asked, what are some of the best things about living in Slovenia? Uh, and I would say, because these are things I've just gotten used to, it's safe and it's clean and it's laid back. Those kind of like the vibes easy because like you don't have to worry. I mean, let's say crime in general in Europe is radically lower than the US. Slovenia is annually ranked in the top 10 safest countries. When I moved here, I had two little kids, so that was a big deal for me. And so I really appreciate the fact that you kind of go anywhere at any time, or your kids can go, my kids now, okay, they're teenagers, they just take the bus wherever, down to the beach and walk along the promenade. But even when they were younger, even when they were, I don't know, like 8 and 12 or 8 and 13, they would, it's like, hey, it's summer, hang out with your friends on the promenade, come home at midnight, no big deal. So it's really safe. It's really clean. That's the thing I noticed traveling in Europe because every country is different, and I'm really used to Slovenia. We recycle well. We just have that infrastructure and kind of the mentality because that's important. Any little town you go to, there's always like, hey, this is for plastic, and this is for glass, and this is for compost, and this, and people are really good at it, and I like that. Because nature-wise, it's so beautiful. I think people have that pride of like, let's keep it nice. And then the vibe, it's just there's no culture shock when I moved here. Being on the coast now here, it's not so radically different from kind of me growing up in Southern California. So yeah, I think that and it's because literally everyone speaks English or understands some English, or you could always find a menu or anything else you need in English. And hey, if you speak some Italian in this part of Slovenia, you know, that's a great second language to have. You can communicate really easy. And I'd say people on a superficial level, and I don't mean that in a bad way, are very open. So it's easy to have a conversation with someone and chit chat, and the language is not a barrier. So those are some of the things that I really appreciate here. I think the last thing would just be proximity to everywhere. I mean, this is kind of Central Europe. You really are, you're on the Adriatic, so you're on the kind of Mediterranean part. I'm 4 hours, whatever. I can drive to Munich in 4 hours, Budapest in 5.5 hours, Vienna in about five. Trieste, Italy is 10 minutes drive away from where I live, and I can hop on a train and get anywhere in Italy fast, especially because they have a great train system. So yeah, it's really convenient. When I went to Portugal like 5 6 years ago, I thought, wow, I'm so far away from like from where I gravitate to, and I do like the Mediterranean. I do love Italy and Greece and the Balkans and Turkey. So proximity to everything here is great. Um, and the transport, while the train system has limitations, and some of that is old rails, and also some of that is just the topography of things. Getting around, not needing a car. I drive very little here. It's really easy. So that would be one of the big pluses of living here. Um, and then what would be the downside? What are the things about Slovenia, the downside of Slovenia? My expat friend of mine, she lives in Zagreb. So she probably, and I'm guessing some of the things that I have here, she'd think of as well. And I'd say the two biggest things, and they're kind of widespread in Europe, is just bureaucracy in general. And most Americans probably haven't dealt with bureaucracy. Most Americans probably have not dealt with immigration before. So that's one of those things where I would just, like you have to have patience, and then once your patient runs out, then you have to have an attorney, and then you have to like find your Facebook groups like expats to figure out how to sort things out, or where to go, where not to go, how to do this, who might like help you out, whatever. It can be very frustrating and challenging. Um, which could parlay into a question about kind of residency stuff, which maybe I'll get to in this chat. But that is just. like there's no, I don't think there's any place in Europe. Very few places are going to be easy. Certainly not as easy as people think. If you get a digital nomad visa, things like that, that can be a little bit better because there's programs there for that. But even that, I'm guessing, is not like smooth sailing all the way. And the other thing, and again, I'd say this is something I've noticed most places in Europe, it's just more of close culture. I mentioned recently that I think everyone's very easy to talk to on a superficial level, but it's harder to go kind of deeper. And people are, I'd say this, you have more closed societies than what I'm used to dealing with in the US. And that's most places I go. I felt like when I've been in Turkey and I've spent a lot of time there, that's a lot seems like a lot more open. Um, and that's kind of something I noticed maybe between people there and a lot of cultures in Europe that it just seems more open. I know of expat friend of mine who lives in Prague said that basically everyone has their set of friends, their group of friends for life from high school. And sometimes they add a few more friends in university, and that's that. So you show up, middle-aged person later on in life, and like it's not that no one will talk to you or people won't be friendly to you, but like the idea of like making new friends, it's different. And I think ultimately that's why if you become an expat, it really helps to have an expat kind of network, which is why there's so many expat groups and stuff like that. I actually don't do much with expats here because my job allows me to travel, and so I have kind of friends everywhere, and that kind of substitutes for having expats here. Which they're not a whole lot of. So if you're like thinking, "Hey, I'll come to Slovenia," it's like, there's a few Americans here and a few people from other countries, but the expat scene's not so big. Um, but otherwise, I'd say I think living in another country, there's little things that happen, and after they happen so much, you kind of like get annoyed. But you're not like, oh, don't move here because of this, of X, Y, and Z. They're just like, oh, that's annoying. But I think that's anywhere. If you have a place you like where you live in the US, you probably eventually start getting annoyed at things there as well. I think it's just kind of human nature. Um, so there's not like a big disadvantage, uh, really that I can say for Slovenia. Um, so yeah, it's the whole process. That's a whole that I think that's a whole podcast that Sarah and I have done that we need to put out there. But it's you have to have a lot of patience. Get an attorney. When I moved here, and I'll just say this for everything I say, like this is all through my eyes, and I haven't had to deal with anything for well, I haven't had to deal with all the initial stuff for 11 years or more than 11 years, probably 12 years ago. Whatever the rules were 12 years ago, they might have changed. So nothing is gospel here. But I would say this that you first have to get a work permit, and then once you have a work permit, then you get the temporary residency permit from that. And I think that's the case with a lot of places in Europe. And talking with other expats who've been done this in Greece, Croatia, Italy, other places, people and know some things about Slovenia, they said Slovenia actually is not the worst of the worst. So that means you either need to get hired by a company here, or you could start your own business. And I'm sure that's changed as far as how much money you need to have into that business. I think it was 25,000 euros, but that was 12 years ago. Um, and then there's the whole digital nomad thing. That's kind of a separate thing, but that's more of like, hey, that's good for 1 year or 2 years. And by the way, Slovenia is rolling out their own digital nomad program in November, and it's going to be a 1 year only thing. You can reapply, but you have to be gone from the country for at least 6 months before you do it. So it's not really set up for long term. Some countries are more long term. I don't know if the digital nomad visas are more than 1 year, but you can renew them. I know countries like Spain and Croatia, you can have them longer term because I think part of the idea is let's have a thing where people can live here and put money into whatever community they live in, for a long period of time. But Slovenia doesn't have that yet. But anyway, for residency stuff, those are your two avenues So you can't just say, hey, I'm retiring and I'm going to buy a house. Buying a house or buying a property or anything like that, for the most part in Europe, doesn't really work with getting you residency stuff. And I would advise against that completely because traveling in a country and living in a country are two different things. You might have a place that you love to visit, and it might not be the place to live. And quite honestly, like, hey, I live in a small village next to a city of 20,000 people. And people would say, like, why would you choose of all the places to choose? Why would you choose that? Because it's a livable situation, and the costs are good. They work for me. So sometimes, I could always go visit whatever amazing city I want to. But sometimes it's really just finding a place like, yeah, that fits the things that I need because, I got all this extra free time, hopefully, to go see everything else you want to see. So yeah, just, really investigate. I had what 10 years? No, 15 years of traveling in Slovenia before I moved here. So I kind of had a better idea of what I was getting into. Um, so yeah, getting residency is not easy, and then there's all sorts of stuff, and you could hear horror stories from me and other people, and then there's some people, like depending on where you go, what office you go to, it can be not so horrible. Um, it's something you really have to be it's something you have to really think about a lot. That would be my biggest stress. Doesn't matter if Slovenia or wherever in Europe. It's not something you could do on the spur of the moment. But that's kind of a whole kind of separate piece there. I think Sarah and I'll have a conversation about that at some point for people who are interested in doing that. Okay, so what else? What else can we do about? Let's see, living here. Okay. Do you think the political climate has changed in your time living in Slovenia? Hmm. Well, here's the thing. Uh, I think this again is part of being an expat, and it might be different if you move to Slovenia. If you married someone here, then you kind of get in with, let's say, the local Slovenians. Then you're going to have this extra family that you didn't have before, and they're all local. And I don't have that. So, like, I read Slovenian headline news in English, but I don't pay attention. I can't vote here, so I'm not really into politics too much, and I don't really want to go and read all the news all the time because most of the issues, they're not my issues. That said, like, let's say political landscapes in Europe in general change a lot more than they do in the US because you have parliamentary government, and those things can shift, or you get a vote of no confidence and all of a sudden there's just a new vote and you have lots of different parties, and there's like, I think, two new parties this year. There's some election coming up later on this fall, and there'll be two new parties to that. So that's probably at least 9 or 10 parties they have here. Things can kind of, flip flop, let's say within a year or two, and that's a lot different than the US. Um, I guess maybe the biggest thing I've noticed living here because of the Balkan migrant route is just the dealing with immigrants. And to be honest, like, people have opinions about that here, but there's very few immigrants that actually come and live here in Slovenia. It's not an issue like it is in Italy or Germany. But that's one of those things I probably notice more people. And you could say, like, hey, do people not like immigrants here? Are people angry at their government for not doing X, Y, and Z? I guess that's something I've kind of noticed over my time here as becoming a bigger issue, maybe because it didn't exist so much. Um, that said, like, what I could tell in 11 years is a lot of diversities happen in Slovenia because you have a lot more people moving here. There's a lot of jobs that there's not enough people for. So you've got different communities here and in Croatia. Just in this little town I live in, I don't know what, we have like 1,000 people here or something like that. There's a family, like an extended family of Filipinos here. And I was like, well, what are they doing here? Maybe they work at the port because there's a big port. I figured that would be a job. Probably the language barrier wouldn't be such a big deal. And I found out, no, they're actually working as local bus drivers because there's a shortage of bus drivers here. I see them like shopping every week at the grocery store, and finally I ask, like, hey, where are you from? They're like, oh, we're from the Philippines. And I never in a million years think, like, I'm going to find Filipinos living, unless they have a restaurant, and that would be in Ljubljana. in a small place like this. So there's more people coming in from different places, and I think that's kind of changing the landscape a little bit. But part of that is really necessary because you've got such a negative birth rate or growth rate, population rate in Europe in general. So yeah, there's people from different from more and more different countries, and that was certainly was a lot different than when I moved here. Um, and then a friend of mine asked who traveled to Slovenia a couple times. He asked me, hey, like, what's the vibe? What's the animosity factor towards Americans, especially with tariffs and everything else? And Sarah covered this so much earlier this year on our social media. Is seriously, you know, like 99.9998% of the people in Europe may be interested where you're from, but they're not judging you based on like, oh, you're from there, so you must be this. I mean, it's one of those things where if you're coming on one of our tours, please, unless you're Canadian, don't wear the Canadian hat or put the Canadian patch on. There's not this stuff that doesn't happen. There's people aren't rioting in the streets and running after you because you're American. And I can say that kind of about any country. I've got connections with a lot of Russians here. Well, they're not getting burned at the stake, and there's a war going on that most people are siding with Ukraine on. So it's a really non-issue, which is good. That's great. I mean, if you travel and you meet people from other countries, you shouldn't be judging them on their government. And so far, that's basically the way it is here. I've never had an issue where someone actually said something negative to me personally because I was an American or because of my politics or because of my country's politics or anything like that. So please, you can come to Europe and not have to worry about that. Um, and then so let's maybe move on over to something that people I think will are expecting me to talk about, and that's some food stuff. So I got questions from a lot of people who've traveled with me before to Slovenia about food things. And and we'll start with the real basic one. Hey, what's the food like? It's like, oh, it totally sucks. Don't come here. Like it sucks so bad that we just happen to run like a bunch of food and wine tours here. But no, seriously. The food here, I'd say, and I could say this, I think, as an American living here, so I'm never going to be like fully integrated. I'm not Slovenian. I'm just kind of, hanging out here long term. But I could honestly say, yeah, the food scene here is really great. And value proposition wise, I think it's one of the best places to eat in Europe because you can get so many different things. Slovenia's got so many influences from around it. I mean, you have, hey, Habsburg Empire was here, Venetian Empire was here. These countries are here, these countries are there. That when Slovenia didn't exist, because of the geography of it, a lot of the different regions that make up Slovenia back then, when there weren't trains and planes and cars and everything, were very separated. Therefore, you have food that's quite different because it wasn't like someone where I live near the sea probably would ever really be in Ljubljana or be somewhere in Putui or Maribor in eastern Slovenia. And that's shown in the way that they just have different dialects here because of the same thing. They were so isolated. So you have a lot of different regional, very regional food, but like the quality of food, the ingredients and how it's prepared and seasonality, and more and more you could say kind of 0 kilometers where the food is coming from. It's really great. And I like to tell my guests, if you have a bad meal here, you probably did something on your end. Like you just like you have to go out of your way, I think, to get something bad or to get ripped off. And that's really nice. I really appreciate the fact that I have not felt ripped off here. Um, so let's talk about like some of the things I really like. And so if you've traveled with me, you probably know because you've eaten them. And if you come on one of the food tours that we do, you even get one of these little passports. Oops, can't really see it on Zoom so much. It's a food passport, and I've got about 50 different food and drinks in here from Slovenia, a little bit from the Friuli part of Italy, from the Istria region, which is Croatia and Slovenia, and then all the way south down to Dalmatia, Bosnia, and things like that. and just to highlight things so people are like, wow, what's this? Or when am I going to try this? And to get an idea of like, there's a lot of diversity here in this small country, and also like if we want to take Slovenia and Croatia as former Yugoslavia and or Balkans, which okay, that might be one of those terminologies that like you don't tell someone here that they're Balkans, and I'm not sure they're completely Balkans, but certain things here are. That's one of those like okay, stay like etiquette things like okay, don't try to tell them where they are. Don't necessarily tell them they're in Eastern Europe because I don't think they are, and don't necessarily say they're Balkans. But anyway, this little area of the world has got a lot of diversity. So some of the things I like a lot. There's in the Karst region, which is about 45 minutes from where I live. That's got these wonderful caves. It's the home of the Lippensonner horses. Um, that has a specialty where you get like a thin beef steak and you put prosciutto, and the prosciutto on this part of Slovenia here and the part of Croatia near me, it's all air dried. It's not smoked. And then you cook that with prosciutto on top in a red wine sauce, and the red wine is called Tehran wine, which is a red grape grown on this very red soil. It's got a lot of iron and minerals in it. That's like one of those classic dishes where in Western Slovenia you can get like, I'm gonna get the Karst plate because it's gonna have that beefsteak and the prosciutto, the red wine sauce, probably gonna have a glass of Tehran wine with it as well. I love that. And there's a farmhouse I've been going to for more than 20 years that serves that, and I'm like, hey, like that's one of the meals when I'm here, like I need to be served. Um, uh, from the eastern part of Slovenia, there's something called bograč, which is a little bit like a goulash, but in Hungary, goulash is more like a soup. This is more like a stew. You have to have three different types of meats. One of them should be a wild game meat. And that's one of the nice things in Slovenia. If you like venison or wild boar or bear, I've had bear maybe about once a year here. And they make it with that, and it's a little spicier than the Hungarian goulash. Bograc is something really fantastic. I love that. You kind of can't get it in most places, and probably it's a good thing. It's like some of those things like you should only get it if you're in the specific region there. Can't get that out where I'm at. Um, there's a lot of soups, and I love soup. I think soup in Europe is like anywhere I go in Europe, I'm always going to have soup, especially if it's not summertime. Um, and there's something called bobici soup, which is a little bit like a minestrone soup, but it's a corn soup. It's corn and beans and really small but thick cut pieces of prosciutto, and that with like some fresh baked bread out of the oven. Oh, that's so good. That's called bobici. Um, then there's a dish that's in one little part of Slovenia and the part of Italy next to it called a frico, and that's cheese and potato mashup. It's like a complete carb bomb. It's like bring your own defibrillator when you eat that, but it's fantastic. It's gooey. It's yeah. I mean, you don't want to have it too often, but damn, it's really good. And the last thing I'd say for like maybe my top five is a dish, and it's more Croatian, but you can get it a few places here in Slovenia called peka, which is when you cook something like under a Dutch oven. So you put usually veal or goat or lamb, and you put it in a big metal bell, and then you put the hot embers on top and slow cook it with some potatoes or maybe some carrots as well. And then everything cooks in its juices. It's fantastic. It's for me the best way to eat any kind of meat. Lamb and goat are not so big in Slovenia like they are in Croatia and the rest of the Balkans. There's a place in southern Slovenia that back in the days when you had the Ottoman Empire close by and Habsburg Empire here, they would bring people from the Balkans as like guards, basically like, hey, you're going to be the border guards here in this kind of no man's land. And those people like, yeah, we're bringing our rotisserie lamb and we're bringing our pekka dishes and stuff like that, and you can still get it there, which is great. So sometimes I'm driving in that little area of Slovenia, that little corner of southern Slovenia, which most people miss, and I see some guy on the roadside doing a rotisserie lamb. I'm like, oh yeah, like this is great. I love it. Like if you want that, you have to kind of go and find it. So those are some of the things that I really love. And last thing, as far as desserts go, is gelato in Slovenia is really kick-ass. I mean, there's two places here in Koper, and like I said, it's just 20,000 people that are fantastic. And if I know people go to Italy, love gelato, you come here and you get some really good stuff. A lot of people who open up places here studied in Italy, but they're doing all sorts of interesting thing with flavors. And speaking of food, one of the specialty things in Slovenia, you will know if you've been here, is pumpkin seed oil. You take the seeds of a specific pumpkin, crush them. It's got omega-3 in it. It's really good for you. It's really amazing on salads. It's really good to dip your bread in, but putting that on vanilla ice cream is just like the best. I love that. So there's places that take potitza cake, all these very special dessert things in Slovenia and turn them into their gelato flavors. So a lot of people experimenting stuff, making really good food. Um, Expat friend of mine said, "Hey, is there anything you don't like, or is there anything you don't eat or don't like?" So I used to be a much finicky eater. I still can't believe I'm doing food tours because when I was a teenager in my 20s, an ex-girlfriend once said, like, you're Dow Chemical's best friend, which probably was true at the time. But I'm not one of those people who wants to eat all the weird meats. And I know you should sometimes because that's the specialty and you don't want to let anything go to waste. But in Slovenia, there's not a whole lot of that. I'm not a big fish and seafood guy, and there's a lot of that on the coast, but not, let's say, not so many specialty dishes out of that. So there's nothing really here that, like, oh man, I don't touch that. The one thing that's popular, people want to try it because they've marketed it well, is this cream cake near Lake Bled. I don't like it. It's gross. It's always too creamy and too sugary. And most of the desserts here are not very sugary, but that one is. It's just like over the top. So the creme schnitzel cake, yeah, no, not into that. But otherwise, yeah, everything here, there's a lot of good things, and really, like I said, is very regional. So what you get in Ljubljana, what you get in the eastern part, what you get near Lake Bled, which is north going to Austria a little bit, what you get on the coast, what you get in the western part in some of these micro wine regions, all that food's very, very different. Um, and that's what's great. And hey, I mean, we've had Michelin came here about 5 years ago. Now we've got, I don't know, I want to say maybe 15 or 20 Michelin starred restaurants. We have a three-star restaurant, and that's run by Anna Roche, and she's twice been named top chef of the world. Um, so you can get that. You can get all sorts of, let's say, more home style things here. There's just a wide variety of everything, and it's all really good. So I mean, hence it's really easy for me to kind of enjoy myself and do the food tours here. Um, Another friend of mine asked this. He's from Seattle. He knows I'm from Seattle. Hey, what's a craft beer scene like in Slovenia? Well, when I moved here 11 years ago, it was not much. It was maybe three or four, and they were okay. They were good. But here's the thing. I could say, oh yeah, the craft beer scene's taken off, but the craft beer scene has taken off everywhere. I haven't been to a country recently where they don't have craft beer and where I haven't found something good. There's a lot of hops grown in eastern Slovenia, and there's plenty of people making all sorts of beers. Every time I go to a certain pub or a different grocery store, I see something that I haven't seen before. So, not a problem. I think that's kind of the way it is everywhere here. Oh, and here's one of those tips, travel tip for those people coming to Ljubljana. If you're there on a Friday, Friday is open kitchen, and that's about 50 plus different little kiosks all set up serving different foods and drinks in along the riverside. It's fantastic. It runs from like late March until the end of October, um, and that's a great place to go try some and sample some craft beers. So yeah, that's not an issue there. If you that, I'm not really going to go too much into the wine. I think most people who follow us on Adventures of Sarah, I have enough wine posts and tours that focus on a lot of wine. But the wine scene here is really good. I'd say this about Slovenia, as I would say one of my ultimate compliments to Slovenian people is I think they realize that if they ever want anyone outside of their little country, their little sphere to try to buy their products, they have no brand. They're never really going to have a brand per se. They're just not that big. They're just not. And let's face it, Italy is the best country branding food and drinks by far in Europe, I think. So the Slovenians say, you know what? The only way people are going to know about it and want to buy it, live somewhere else, is really make something amazing. And so the level of whatever it is that they're making, it could be like organic salami from bear and wild boar. I know one guy who does that, and it's like, wow, that's fantastic. I'm sure that's going out to Michelin restaurants all over Europe, or wine, or this pumpkin seed oil that I talked about, and olive oil. I mean, this region I'm in, the Istria region, the part of it is in Croatia. That's 7 years in a row, top olive oil region in the world. There is so many people that are making such high quality products that put a lot into it, and that is the way they kind of get themselves out there. Um, which leads me to another question that someone asked. They said, "Hey, what is Slovenia famous for?" And honestly, I kind of have to say, and I put this in a good way, is I kind of think I don't know if it's famous for anything. I mean, the way I look at it is like, hey, I think if you watch sports, we've got the cyclist who just won his fourth Tour de France, and Luka Doncic. I mean, everyone in Slovenia knows Luka Doncic because he's one of the top basketball players in the NBA. And I think people from Europe know that. And I kind of look at this as not like a US thing, like, hey, Slovenia, it's not just Americans knowing something about Slovenia. It's like the rest of the world or the rest of Europe. And Luka Doncic is, I mean, he's, this amazing player, and he's a big deal here, as he should be. Um, and again, it's kind of like it's a small country, but they've had some Olympic gold medalists. They don't do everything, but they do certain things really, really well. But honestly, I kind of like Slovenia that it's not known for something. Game of Thrones wasn't filmed here, and whatever amazing food products or movies that you think of from Italy, or perhaps music from France and food from France, and you can kind of go around Europe and think, here's all these things. Like, what are these countries known for? I mean, I love Romania. It's like, hey, well, that's Dracula's birthplace, right? And Slovenia doesn't really have that. Like, I think it's kind of good. It kind of fits in with the fact that we're not really doing mass tourism here because we don't have an Instagrammable, like, hey, everyone has to come to Slovenia just to take a picture of this and then leave. And I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate the fact that the tourism board has always made it to be like, hey, we're green and clean and boutique, and that's where we want to stay. And I love that. That fits in exactly with what the kind of tours we want to run. And to be honest, like, hey, like, you don't want everyone in the world. You want people who can really appreciate what you have, and we don't need to make it a Disneyland, or mass tourism kind of just complete disaster. So. Um, yeah, I think Slovenia is its own kind of thing, and I think it's best no matter what I tell you, no matter how good it might sound, or did you like some of these videos I've been posting this week? I think it's one of those places it'll always be undersold, and when you come here, you're like, oh, okay, I didn't know. Like, it looks nice. I heard the food's good. Blah 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 blah. But yeah, it has something, and I don't think every country has that. So that's one of the things I really appreciate about Slovenia, and that hasn't changed. I could say that in 25 years. Hey, tourism's changed, and of course there's more people visiting, and there's more of everything. I mean, it has to be. That's just the way Europe and the world's tourism has worked. But I think there's so many tiny kind of special places here to, like, this picture right behind me. This is the mountain, the highest mountain pass. Um, it's a little over 2,000 meters. It's got 50 switchbacks. I just drove it with a group of mine in April. I hadn't driven over it in a long time. It's so beautiful, and you're right there. You're like, oh, there's some mountains there. Oh, those are Italy. That mountain in the back over there, oh, that's Austria. And then this beautiful valley we drive into, that's Slovenia. So there's still a lot of places, and it's just, yeah, it is really special. Um, and and one person asked, like, hey, like, why did you start running tours in Slovenia? And it's really kind of two things. One, I really like the country, and two, like, hey, no one was offering Slovenia 20 years ago. Um, and I find it funny. I find it in a good way that like Sarah's, one side of her family is Slovenian, and she told me this story. She's told many times. She's probably told it on her social media that like when she was a teenager and doing she had to do a project like pick a country and give her a report on it, and she's like, oh, I'm gonna give my report on Slovenia, and the teacher's like, there's no country called Slovenia because at that time there wasn't, but that doesn't mean there wasn't Slovenia because there was. It just didn't exist as a country. But yeah, it is really a special place. Nothing's perfect. It's not perfect. I'm not perfect. Living wherever is not perfect. Um, Being an expat's got its ups and downs. Every wherever you might live or visit, there's things you like or things you don't like, and there's things you don't see too as a visitor sometime. But on a whole, it's like, hey, I've looked around many countries. I've traveled a lot. Um, and there's very few places I could be like, yeah, I could see myself living there. And I think with Slovenia, I had spent enough time here and made some friends, and seen it more than just the surface level as a tourist to go, yeah, this has got a lot of really good things that I like. It's kind of it's easy. It's not it I found it fairly easy. One of these days, I'd love to have my kids on one of these live streams. Of course, they probably wouldn't want to talk, but it'd be great for people to kind of get their perspective on how things are here. Because they're multilingual, they've traveled a lot, and they probably look at things in Slovenia differently than I do as an adult. But yeah, there's really so much to offer here. So I'm going to go through just see a few more questions here. Um, change one thing about Slovenia. What would it be? Uh, um, yeah, that would just be that whole fix a bureaucracy thing, and make it easier. I really do really believe like, hey, it'd be great if more people, at least even if they didn't move permanently, experience the place. And it's harder to do, of course, with all the Schengen stuff because you can only be here so for a short period of time. It would be great if they streamlined the process. I'll give this as an example, and then I will sign off. Um, Estonia, the little country all the way next to Finland and Russia and Latvia, they call it Estonia because they basically did everything online. They were the first country to do online voting. If I want to open up a LLC and get a business going in a half an hour, I can just do that online. Boom, 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 pay some stuff. And it's one of those things that when you are a small country, that's one of those things that's very advantageous. Like that gets people going, hey, I'm going to do my business there because it's easy and it's streamlined and it's all online. I don't have to hire an attorney. I don't have to like, wait for forever. And Slovenia is small enough. I wish they would kind of streamline their stuff, but I think that's part of this, like, hey, we're still kind of in the Balkans because everything is just all kind of in weird ways fragmented because you have Napoleon laws and laws from Habsburg here and EU this and well, we're going to make our own decision here, and it's just kind of a mess. And if that was fixed, it'd be great because I think this is an easy place for people to live, even if they kind of hadn't thought about it, because it is so close. It has so much. Um, and there's so many different places in such a small country. So yeah, I kind of didn't really when I thought about this, I wasn't going to say like, hey, I'm just here because I want to promote Slovenia and like, yay, because I'm not a homer. I like to look at things objectively, and there's things that piss me off or things that make my hair like turn this color sooner than it should. But you know what? There's a lot of cool stuff here, and there's a lot of things I still haven't seen. So yeah, anyway, thank you for joining me. If you have any questions, you're like, hey, I didn't put my question in, or I'm watching this like a week later. If you type something in, say, Andrew, what about this? I will at least reply back on Facebook. And yeah, anyway, thanks for tuning in. By the way, just as a programming note, The last week I've done things for Slovenia. I'm taking my 13-year-old son Leo to Central Asia in a couple of days. So I'm gonna have some stuff from Kazakhstan, from Kyrgyzstan, which we've never been to before, a bunch of nature places I don't know a whole lot about. So I'll be doing some updates from there, which will be about a 180 from Slovenia, as you can imagine. So tune in. We'll have some new content from some more countries that you probably have never heard about before, never thought about going to, but hey, check them out because there's so many interesting places in the world that just keep your mind open, okay? Thanks. Ciao.